Welcome back everybody. As you can see here, we've got this beautiful Ducati Multistrada V2S. Now, Ducati North London in Watford have been kind enough to lend me the bike for the day while my Ducati Desert X is in for an oil service. Now today's format's gonna be a bit different. Because I've got limited time with the bike, I'm gonna read off a spec sheet of some of the new things on this bike compared to the old one, and then we're gonna go on a road test and see what I think of the bike. There's also another topic I've got to cover, and that's why I've deleted a few videos off YouTube. So we're gonna go into that while we're riding the bike and explain to you lot why I've done that. Okay, let's go straight into the specs of the bike. Let's begin with the engine. So we're down on CC compared to the previous model, but you don't feel it much. You know, all the numbers are still there. You've got 70% of the torque. I think Ducati say, what did they say? It was from 3,000 RPM onwards. So you've got loads of torque low end. The peak RPM is higher. It's more around 10,000 RPM. So you've got to sing it a little bit more, got to wring its neck a bit more to get that brake horsepower out of the engine, but it's still there. So working on there, the engine's pretty much the same. Power and how it feels, I think you notice the torque. There's a little bit less torque lower down. I'm not quite feeling as much grunt as I did on the other bike. So I can feel a little bit there. And then wringing its neck, yeah, I think when you're revving out sort of third gear, it seems to go on a little bit. It just feels like that power drops off slightly. So slight changes in the engine there, but you've obviously got weight saving. Ducati say here that it's around 54.5 kilos. So it's the lightest twin cylinder to date they've done. And that is something you do notice in the chassis. This bike does feel lighter with the V twin engine. You're not going to notice a huge amount, but that's all the low end weight down there. And moving it around, you know, grabbing onto these grab handles and moving the bike, it does feel a little bit lighter there. You can feel that. The Desert X that I've just ridden to Ducati does feel very heavy when you're moving that around. It's very top heavy, that bike. So different bikes I know, but similar platforms. And if you're looking at one of these bikes, you've probably considered the Desert X. So it's worth sort of comparing the two a little bit and not so much focusing on sort of like the older Multistrada models versus the new ones, because the changes aren't huge. Transmission drivetrain, you've got that quick shifter up and down. They've lost the sensor there, so it's all internal, which is quite neat, nice and smart. It's quite nice. Hydraulic slipper clutch. Did just ride it back here, and yeah, clutch. I dropped it down a couple of gears and let the clutch out. It was quite smooth. I was running it with the ABS off as well, which I quite like doing with the rear ABS off. So I was getting a sort of realistic, real-world experience there with the bike. That was nice. Again, we're going to touch on all this on the ride and the different modes, because it's got loads of different modes, loads of electrics. Very exciting bike if you're into that geeky stuff. 15 front tooth, 40 tooth rear sprocket. So standard weight now, the V2S is 202 kilos, so it is light. It doesn't feel like heavy bike, you know, with some of the other Tourer models, you know, while the V4 they do, or the GS and stuff is much bigger bike. So the 200 kilos is quite a sweet spot. And as I said, it's quite low down. There's a lot of weight low down on this bike, and you really feel it when you're on the road. It does flip over quite nicely. So the standard V2 is 199 kilos, so you're 3 kilos up there. That's pretty some electric stuff for all the special suspension. Seat height. Now this is quite an important one on the Multistrada, because I've got a friend who's quite interested in one of these bikes, and he got on really well with it. He's a little bit shorter than me, and he found the seat height of this, whereas other bikes like the Ducati Desert X, for comparison, it's a very, very tall seat there. So that works quite well. So the seat height is adjustable on this, 830 to 850 as standard. If you get the seat accessory, you're going to go up to 870 mil, and with a low seat accessory down to 810. If you get the low seat and the low suspension kit, so this would be for much shorter riders, you can get as low as 790 mil seat height, which is actually very accommodating for those riders who are a bit smaller. So it's good that you can lower the seat height by that amount. Onto the suspension. Marzocchi forks, 45 mil tubes here, sack shock, fully adjustable, you know, all the works. You can get to it down there. You can play around with it. With this one, you've got the S, so it's all electronic suspension, which I really like. I feel like if you're buying a Ducati and you're going to spend the kind of money that these are on it, it's kind of cool to get the electronic suspension, because you can put it in dynamic mode and then just let Ducati do all it's doing. Sometimes, you know, you've got the clickers and you play around with them. I often just set them standard and never touch them again, because they kind of work. Unless you're going to be doing some real off-road stuff, I feel like the dynamic electric suspension is really good. And you feel it on the road. It really does work well. You hit some bumps, that low-speed compression, it just sort of takes them well. If it's high-speed compression, you know, you're going across the road, you hit a pothole, it sort of soaks that up. So being dynamic, that's very good, because it's a lot of work to faff around with low-speed, high-speed compressions and rebounds and stuff. Unless you know what you're really doing, it's a difficult thing to do. So suspension's really cool. I love the electric suspension. I'm very geeky. I like playing around with it and getting all your modes set up. So if you're going along fast, you're going to set it in sport and turn everything off. And then if you want to be on your touring or wet mode, you can change it all and get your nice comfy suspension set up with your smoother throttle settings and your ABS on if you want it, that sort of thing. So very cool. Electronics and lighting, you got the 5-inch TFT color display, which is very smart on this bike. I can't knock that at all. It's lovely. I love the Ducati system going through it, the way you can change all the modes and just press enter, fly on to the next one. It's very, very nice to work through, and it's not complicated once you've got to grips with it. So I like that a lot. Aerodynamics and rider comfort. Now we're going to touch on this a little bit later. Now you've got an adjustable screen here, which is cool. That comes up and down very easily. Now I'm going to touch on it later because I'm not sold on it yet. With all these tourer bike screens, get a lot of windscreen head buffering on your helmet. We'll go into it later when we're on the ride. What else we got here? Aerodynamics, short front beak, this sort of thing. It's a very smart looking bike. I do like this beak, you know, it is cool. From the front, it looks really aggressive. Some people are like, oh no, stuff like the Ducati looks better with the GS, the Desert X or the GS and the Africa Twin, those kind of touring bikes. But for what this is, you know, it isn't an off-road focused bike. It is on the road. So you've got to have some aerodynamics in there, and it looks really smart. I like it. Accessory packages. Now that's quite an interesting one on this bike, because if you're going to buy one, you're probably not just going to have it like this. You know, this one doesn't even have a center stand, and that's something I would always recommend on a touring bike, because just cleaning it, moving it around, or even parking it is so nice having it on that center stand. Now, the Desert X, for example, is quite tricky to get on a center stand, but this being a little bit lighter is probably going to work a little bit more easy. Just pop it on there, and then makes just servicing it, you know, changing the tires. If you're going to do it, maybe you want to take the tires off because you want to be a little bit more DIY, take them down to the shop yourself. Makes all those jobs a little bit easier. Changing the chain tension, cleaning the chain, all those things. The center stand's like a must-have. I really like those on these kind of bikes. So definitely spec that. But we've got different packages. We've got the Travel S trim, which includes plastic side panniers, center stand, and heated grips. That's probably like the minimum you want, really. Urban package comes with a tank pocket, tank lock flange, plastic top case. And you've got all these different packages. Touring package, enduro package. That's quite a cool one, because I'd like to make this a bit more aggressive for the whole enduro thing. So that comes with aluminium radiator guard, engine protection plate, bull bar, and extra LED lights, which is going to look smart. So obviously you can get all this stuff and retrofit it yourself, but it's kind of nice if you're doing the whole package with a new bike to get Ducati to stick it all on there. It's going to be quite smart. So we've got loads of different sort of packages and configurations there. Now, just some costs for the extras you can get for this, you know, like a touring pack with the panniers, side stand and grips. Side stand, center stand, you're looking at £1,100. So I think that's quite fair, you know, with the panniers and the center stand and the heated grips. You want heated grips no matter what. So that's quite a good package. You know, you got the other ones, you got Termagoni N-can. Now you want an exhaust on this. That is something I have to like stress. Standard system just isn't for me. Not for everyone, but I do feel like loud bikes get seen and heard more. And I feel like when you're riding, it adds to the character. This bike feels a bit dull without a bit of a bark to it. And that V-twin's a nice engine. It's going to sound good. So you want to sort of release that a bit. So minimum N-can, 100% on these bikes. Personally, I'd go with the full system and just get it done, because it's just going to sound wicked. The full system is expensive from Ducati. Termagoni full exhaust, £2,200. That's quite a lot there. You can get a taller touring screen, engine bash plate, 200 quid, touring screen 166, wire spoke wheels 1,300. I quite like the wheels on this. I'm not sure if it suits the wire spoke wheels. They do like a Pikes Peak edition with the forged wheels. It looks really cool. So I'm kind of thinking the vibe on this is quite nice with just the standard alley wheels. And maybe if you're going for a bit more of a Desert X style thing with the bigger 21-inch front, this is only 19. It looks quite cool with the spokes. So that's an option anyway. Engine bars, 400 quid. I mean, they're going to help. If you are going to be doing a little bit of off-road, engine bars make sense, because there's a high chance you're going to drop it at some point, some gravel or wet stone with green laning. Could be quite handy. Heated grips are 300 quid, or if you want the aluminium panniers and rails, it's £1,200 plus 841 for the rails. So quite expensive, but they will look smart. So there we go. That's some fact sheets done. Let's get geared up and get out on the bike, and we'll do a little road test, and we're going to touch on the subject I said earlier about deleting videos. Right, I feel like this is a nice place to start this video. Up at RAF High Wycombe, lovely Spitfire and Hurricane there. So I've got the Ultimate Ear squidgy ear plugs in today. Although this bike's not very loud, it's important to still wear them because wind noise is extremely noisy and still damages your ears. So link in the description below. Ultimate Ear have been kind enough to give us a 10% discount for all my viewers, so go check the website out. Not going to be wearing the headphone one today because I'm talking to you guys. Let's fire the bike up. Straightforward process. Turn it on, hit the start button. I have noticed a couple of times starting this that it's been a bit hesitant to start. I'm not sure if that's something to do with the variable valve timing, but you know, normally these fire up quite straightforward, so interesting there. Now I'm in sport mode, so we've got wheelie control off, we've got ABS on the front and off on the rear, and a few other bits and bobs. Now this hasn't got crazy power, so I haven't really felt the need that wheelie control is that important. It's probably better on the V4, but let's head off and get going. Start talking to you about what this bike's like. So when I picked this up this morning, you know, I've done a few hours riding on it now. It was very interesting to see how nice it was just to get on it and feel at home. I thought it was going to be a little bit more like the Desert X, a bit twitchy, and it's not. It's really solid. You jump on the bike and you feel like you've been on it. You know, all these buttons are a little bit daunting when you initially start riding the bike, but as soon as you've been on it for a little bit, it becomes a little bit more simple. And it's always good to check a bike out before you ride it for the first time, see where everything is, what everything does. You know, you've got your cruise control here, you've got these toggle switches here, which I absolutely love: up, down, left, right, and enter. And you can scroll through your settings like that to have a look at your different settings and stuff like that. Riding info mode, you can go through them all on the fly. I quite like that, and then just go back into your menu, which is going to show you speed. So that's handy. Indicators down here, quite easy to get to. Horn button, hazard lights. On the other side, you've actually got the suspension button, which is really cool on the top here, and then you can flick through dynamic, sport. So you can click that and then you can press down here and go into different modes, which is nice. So on the fly you can play around with that, so you don't have to go into all the riding modes and change that around. So I find that a neat little design there for the suspension settings. Obviously if you've got electronic suspension, you want to be able to get it into the mode you want it to quite quickly. You don't want to be faffing around going to the menu. So that's a great design there. Your usual bits and bobs like your light switches there for your DRLs and on off. You've got your main beam setting here. These are set to auto, so they're going to run like that. So yeah, first impressions are very good of the bike. It's comfy. As I mentioned earlier, the seat kind of pushes you forward a wee bit. I'm trying to get a nice comfy position on it, but I haven't felt uncomfortable. Maybe it's just a little bit different to the Desert X in terms of the seat itself. So it's not uncomfy at all, just a little bit different there, pushes you forward a bit more. But as I mentioned, that pad on the back, when you're accelerating, it's much nicer to work with. Speedo's jumping around a bit there. I'm not actually going on there. It seems to be very sensitive to your speed. The riding position is nice. You know, again, I keep going back to the Desert X, but it's a very similar bike. You know, it's a similar weight, similar power, similar engine. The bars are up high. You've just got a slightly different fairing and tank shape, but other than that, it is very similar. But what you do notice is the suspension straight away. The suspension on this is totally different. That's what makes this bike feel completely different to the Desert X. Obviously, this has got the Scorpion, Preddy Scorpion road tyres on it, and my Desert X has got the knobblies. But besides the tyres, you instantly feel what the bike's doing because of the suspension. The Desert X is very soft. You know, you brake and the front dives down a lot, so that's the sort of difference you're going to get there, whether you like it or not. But this is way more sort of sport touring focused as opposed to more of an off-road bike, as we all know that's what the Multistrada is. But initially you really notice it. You know, in corners like this you just sort of drop in and it can do those lean angles very easy. It doesn't feel like it wants to push on, it just sort of dives around them. So that is a nice feeling that it does that. Whereas the Desert X feels a little bit more loose. This feels like, you know, you can come down here really sort of having it and you're going to get on well. Right, so as I mentioned earlier, I touched on the topic that I had to remove some videos. Now, the reason I've had to do this is because it is a bit of a sort of sensible thing to do. There was a couple of videos where I'd blanked out the speedo and I was like, look, I'm going to do a video and occasionally it's going to touch over sort of national speed limit or whatever, and I was just trying to protect myself. And I met with another YouTuber who's a fantastic guy, really nice gentleman. This was a couple of weeks ago, and we had a chat about stuff, and he mentioned that on one of the videos going quite quick through some twisties, and he sort of just recommended that I just be careful, and it was really nice of him to do that, because it sort of got me thinking. I hadn't thought before. I was being a bit naive and thinking, you know, it doesn't matter, no one's going to care. And it's like, he's got such a good point. It's, I've got a business as well as this, I've got 2 children, I've got a wife, I've got a house I've got to pay for. I can't afford to lose my license. And as much as I love just going along and flying along on a bike, when I started this channel I thought, look, you know, I'm a rider, I can blast, I can do wheelies, get my knee down, I can hold, you know, 1000cc bikes absolutely flat out down country roads. It's fantastic that, say, you're a good rider, and you think you can just go and make these videos, but realistically it's the road, it's the law. It's like there's a place for that, and that's on the racetrack. You know, I've done a couple of videos on track and it's fun. It's very hard to make those videos you know, really enjoyable for somebody to watch, because it's just me going around a track. So unless you're on the bike, you can't really get the thrills that we're doing. So yeah, it was a bit of a naive approach for me to do those videos. So I've had to take a couple down, and it's really sad, because there were some of my favorite videos, like the nostalgia videos with the Ducati 916 and the Kawasaki, and I'm absolutely gutted because they've had some really good views. You know, like some of them had like 500 comments, and I've had such good fun chatting to all you guys about all your experiences and your riding sort of experiences with those bikes, with the 916. You know, it was an amazing era of biking. So I'll have to do some more, but just a bit careful. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't absolutely taking the mick, you know, like some of these Instagram guys you see who absolutely just cane it, you know, through 50 limits at 140 and stuff, or dangerous riding down country roads, you know, flying, weaving in and out of cars. That's not what I'm sort of interested in, and I don't want to grow the channel based on that sort of thing, because it's not sustainable. And to be honest with you, I hate those videos myself. I really don't like watching those guys do that kind of stuff. It sort of bothers me a little bit. I think it's silly, and it's putting people's lives in danger, and I like to go fast where it's sensible to do so. But at the end of the day, if you're going fast, it's still breaking the law no matter where you're doing it. So yeah, I've got to just take some of those videos down and change the style of these videos a little, and we're going to do all the content within the legal limits of the road, and just try and still, you know, get my sort of passion and love for bikes across. I've recently bought a Triumph Scrambler 1200, and riding down roads like this, I can't think of anything better to do. It's just as fun, completely different obviously, but just as fun as flying down a twisty sort of A road on a Panigale V4. Well, for me anyway, and I'm sure a lot of you would agree. Not everyone's some lunatic fast rider. So yeah, moving forward, that's where the channel's going, and I'd appreciate it if you could stick with me. So hit the subscribe button and follow along, and still jump in the comments and let me know your experiences with these bikes, Multistrada and everything like that. So let's get back onto the Multistrada review. Thank you for listening to me waffle on. So we've touched the suspension, we've touched the engine. Well, no, we haven't touched the engine. Let's go on to the engine. It's pretty awesome. I do agree with their 70% of available torque below 3,000 RPM. That's definitely noticeable on this bike. You know, out of here we can be in third, open up the throttle, gives it the bigs. It pulls away nicely. Look, fourth and fifth, you've got bags of torque, so you're not constantly going through the gearbox. Look, so that's nice. It's got heaps of torque. If you really want to rev it, can go into first gear here, and yeah, I mean it revs out, and the power's right up there. You know, peak power's right at the red line at 10,000 RPM, and that's nice. You know, so you can get on this bike and give it an absolute scream. It's not underpowered. I'd say it could do with a bit more torque, but if you're sort of looking for those things, you're going to go down the V4 route, aren't you? You're not going to get the V2. The whole idea of this V2 is that it's the lighter version. It's nimble. You can move it around, maneuvering the bike small. If you did want to put some knobbly tires in it and go off-road, it's gonna be better to do that than a heavier big bike. You're gonna maybe feel a little bit safer on it, so you're more focused towards, say, like a Desert X on this, just without loads of travel and super soft plush suspension. So you're predominantly going to be doing more touring on this bike. Let's face it, this is a touring bike, and that's what you're going to be doing most of. So the odd gravel roads can be fine, and that's where your sort of mindset comes in, because you think, well, if it's just a little bit of gravel, then the V4 heavier bike's going to be quite fine on it. So I think in a nutshell with this bike, you go with the V2 because you're the kind of guy that likes to scream an engine and get the most out of it, as opposed to sort of, you know, just use your higher gears, third and fourth, and use the torque of the V4. This one can maybe be a little bit more exciting, and without sounding, you know, too sort of old-fashioned, it's going to keep you within the legal limits. Obviously, as soon as you're in second gear, you're out of any sort of legal speed zone in this country, but at the same time, when you're in a V4 with 170 horsepower, you know, it's it's very hard to do the speed limit on that bike, whereas on this one, you know, you can fly about and wring its neck a bit and get a bit more fun out of it. So I do think that that's a huge benefit to getting the V2. Maybe slightly cheaper on insurance as well, because the risk is less and the power is less. And maybe you just like the V2. You know, this bike with the system on it is gonna pop. You know, it's really gonna bark at you with the twin cylinder there. Whereas the V4 obviously has its unique, amazing, lovely sound. But if you're like me, I really do like a twin cylinder sort of bark. So maybe it's just more for you. And this can do everything the V4 can do, apart from just the sort of top speeds and big low end grunt. So I'm impressed with the engine. I like what it does. I like how it rides. I'm not sure I can really notice this sort of heavier flywheel. I mean, riding with it, it just feels like the other engine. It feels very similar. There's not a massive thing there. The biggest thing for me with this bike is the suspension and the way you can put it in dynamic mode, and it just sorts it all out for you. You really can fit it down bumpy roads. It's very soft and plush when you're bouncing along, and then on the road like this, it's very refined and very precise, and you feel a lot more in the road. So you feel it in the bars, you know, small little bumps, you can feel them, whereas when you're down the bumpy stuff, it's taking those small bumps away. So it's a very intelligent system, and it works very well. So I really like the suspension setup on this bike. Very good. Now shortly we will be approaching some twistier roads, so I'm going to go more into the electronics on the bike and the handling of it. But let's just cover a couple of things here while we're here. Let's use the cruise control. Cruise along at 30. Let's set it. I think you've got to be doing 30 to get it working. Is that right? Maybe 31? 32? 30 mile an hour. We're away. Cruise control set. Now let's talk about this bikes and the gears, and because I said earlier I'm not sure it wheelies much. It actually does. So I've tested this, and in first gear it wheelies on the power, so it's got plenty of torque to lift the front, which is impressive because I didn't actually think it was, and that must have been the wheelie control. So I've played around a bit with that, and it's very, very good. And we're going to do a couple of little 0 to 60 runs in a minute, and see how well that sort of traction control works. And we're going to have the wheelie control. We're going to have the wheelie control off and on both of them. Obviously I'm not going to start doing massive wheelies, but we're going to maintain that with a throttle and then see the sort of difference between the two. So we're going to do that. And in second gear it actually lifted the front as well, so it lifts the front in second gear, which is impressive, because I thought for the sort of power of this bike it wouldn't quite be able to do it with the weight, but amazingly it does lift the front in second gear on the power, which is kind of nice to know. So yeah, the wheelie control is needing this, and I stand corrected to what I said earlier. In a second we're going to get down the twisties, and then I'll show you what the handling's like on this bike and why it really separates it from, say, the Desert X or other more off-road focused adventure bikes. Right, now we've got some twisties coming up. The suspension here is where this bike really shows off, because it's poised as you came in. It holds itself together so nicely. It doesn't dip on the brakes. You know, we'll come in at about 60 into here, and I'll brake all the way into the corner look. So we'll brake, go down a couple of gears, braking off. It just, look at that, it leans over nicely. You feel so solid. I don't feel like I'm at any risk there. And there's a couple of bumps on the exit, and it really holds the bike together. You know, that's where this electric suspension comes in. You go through the bump and it takes the bump, and then it goes back to being stiff. Dynamic suspension is just awesome. You can really feel it working its magic there, whereas some of the other sort of adventure bikes or more off-road focus would be very soft, and maybe a bit timid there, and sort of be very soft through the corner. Let's just spin a U-turn here and go back down that road, because it really does show what this bike's capable of doing. And the quick shift and the blip on this is just awesome. You know, you go through the gears. It's a little bit notchy on this bike. Now, the one I've got's done a few more miles. This has only done about 1,500 miles. Mine's done about 4,000. A little bit notchy. Not quite as smooth as like your Panigale V4. But again, down a couple of gears here, you accelerate through the corner, really get off the bike, look, and it just, look at that, it's so much confidence in turning this bike. And that's kind of what you need on a big bike like this. If you had your panniers on all the way, you want to be nice and confident going into corners, knowing that, you know, you can just trust the bike. And with these road Pirelli Scorpions, you really can, and they're going to perform in the wet as well. And that's the beauty of not having sort of knobblies or 50/50 off-road tyres. Everything comes together with the suspension. Down a few gears on the blipper there. Very nice. It's just such a shame it's got the stand exhaust, because I know this would be barking now, and down the gears, a few pops and bangs as we go through. So very, very good round the bends and twisties, which is nice. So we're going to find a little stretch here. We'll do a little 0-60 test, given that we're on a road where you can do that. I think it would only make sense to test it. Okay, let's do this 0-60 test. This is no wheelie control. So it's quick, you know, off the line. That goes nicely. I had my foot on the rear brake there a little bit, so that wasn't too much wheelie there, but it helped keep it down. So let's just quickly turn the wheelie control on, and we'll see what we've got and how much different it makes it. Right, so we've got wheelie control on 4, which is 1 down from the max, and we'll see what it's like. Look at that, no wheelie. That was really nice, and I didn't feel it cut the power hardly at all. So yeah, very, very, very good system. That the wheelie control is suitable, you know, it's going to work. It does what it's supposed to do, and it's not aggressive. You know, some wheelie controls are so shockingly bad. The front comes up, it cuts the power, and Ducati have just got this so perfect now, you know. So it's just a gentle lift of the front wheel. The more you back that wheelie control off, so you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to off, as you go along, it's just going to add that little bit more lift, and it just sails and floats the front wheel. So that's very nice. I'm very happy that the wheelie control is good on this, because it'd been horrible to just have some lame system that doesn't work. So good news in regards to the wheelie control. Now we've got to get a bit of petrol in the old girl, and see, look at that, straight up to 60 and no lift on the front, and then no cuts. It was so smooth. Okay, now I feel like it's important to touch on the traction control. It's lean angle sensitive traction control, and I'm going to show you exactly what that does around here. I'm going to go flat out of this left-hander, and it just does it all for you. Look, absolutely flat. Bike didn't move at all. That is traction control set to 2. Now the tyres are kind of warm, and it's what are we at, 18 degrees today, but the bike didn't move at all there. That was 100 horsepower and all that torque going through the rear wheel, and I was completely flat up that corner, and it didn't move. Now that is a masterpiece in itself. So a very, very good thing about this bike is you've got these rider aids that you can really, really trust upon. You know, it takes a lot to just go flat out mid-corner on a bike, because you think, well, it's just going to spit me off. But this system, as I proved just there, is that good. You know, we'll do it again round here. Come to the corner, second gear, exit, hold it flat, and it just drives. That's it. It's cutting it out a little bit, I can feel it, but it's saving you. It's such a good system. In the wet, that ramped up a little bit is going to be absolutely faultless. So traction control system and all the electronic aids on this bike are just the best in the business at the minute. I cannot stress how good that is to be able to do that. I learned it a lot on the Panigale V4 on track, you know, sort of backing off the traction, got all the way down to number 1 and was still giving it full beans out the corner. It was letting the bike slide around, and oh man, you felt like you were some sort of pro rider, because you were just being able to rely on these rider aids so much. It almost made the day at Portimao feel, well, the 3 days I was there, feel safer. So that's a very good thing. The electronics on this bike are just, yeah, you can literally rely on them, and they work. They're exactly as they should. You know, gone are the days where it's just got some terrible rider aids and they're not very good. They are absolutely top of their game. So yeah, very happy about those. Now I'm bringing the bike back, and I thought I'd get on the A41 and show you what I meant about the screen. So cruising along at 70, you still get that little bit of head shake, a tiny little bit of wind buffer from left to right, like what I was experiencing with the larger Desert X screen. And when you slide it up, it doesn't really change everything all that much. I have to admit, so I'm a bit confused about all this screen business, because I would have thought you sit behind and you get it and you get quite a lot of protection, but I just get a lot of head turbulence from this. Maybe it's my height, I'm about 6 foot, just under, and maybe it's just I'm an awkward size for this kind of bike. But yeah, in either positions, I mean, you get a lot of body coverage from the wind. It's not hitting your body like, you know, when you're on a naked bike, when you're like a parachute. So you're getting that coverage there, but it's just not, I'm not getting this sort of stable head. If I just stand up like that, everything is so smooth. I kind of prefer that. I'd rather go on a long journey, be like a parachute, than I would have my head shake for 4 hours. So I'm interested to know your experiences with the Multistrada. What screens there? So let me know in the comments. So let's summarize this video. What a bike. I'm bringing it back now to North London Ducati. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, I haven't done 4,000 mile road trip on it, but I've been on it for a few hours, and you know, that's as good as it gets really. Normally you do a few hours and you have a little break. So it's comfy, I'm not sore anywhere, it's a good riding position, my legs aren't too bent, everything works as it should, and you know, just impressively, the suspension, the electronics, they all come together in such a good package. It's just an awesome bike. It's hard to beat. If you're looking for a Ducati, obviously it's going to be slightly more expensive than the competition, but man, sometimes there's only so many reviews you can watch. Sometimes you just got to get down here, you know, head up to Watford Ducati, have a chat with them, maybe take a couple of demo bikes out if you're thinking about this, or a Desert X or something, or the V4. They've got them there, so you can see what they've got. It's always good to test them. There's only, like I say, so many reviews you can watch, but I love it. You know, I've ridden it for a few hours now. The suspension, the electronics, the traction control, the wheelie control, everything, all of these functions here, they're just so usable. I'd be happy doing a long trip on this, or just jumping on it, shooting down to the shops on a Sunday. I think it's a great bike, it really is, and I'm very privileged that they've said, yeah, you can borrow it while the bike's in for a little service. So if now we move on to my sort of humble opinion, what would I sort of do? Would I buy one of these? Now, I'm obviously going to be biased because I've got the Ducati Desert X, but that isn't my sort of own bike. I'm sort of using that as a longer term sort of test. Obviously I've bought it, but I chose that because I just like Ducatis. I think they're cool. So I've gone for that base. What would I rather have? I'm not sure. You know, I've done long trips on the Desert X, and you know, this is a hell of a bike, and maybe if it's more road bias stuff, then this is going to be the better bike because of its composure and the way it handles all the corners and the twisties and stuff, and you know, you can really push on. But for me, I'm looking for just something a little bit more. I kind of like the Desert X, the fact it's loose, it moves around a little bit, it's got the knobbly tyres on it, and the suspension's really soft and wallowy. I'm a real fan of older bikes, so don't get me wrong, I love the really composed stiff suspension, you know, on the sharper edge of the knife handling. But I also do love the old sort of rugged, moves around a lot, doesn't do quite what you want it to kind of bike. So personally, I think the Desert X is very similar to this in terms of all the power. So I'd probably be I'd probably go more towards the Desert X as a bike I'd like to keep and do big trips on. It can do everything this can do. There's going to be no comfort disadvantages between the two bikes. So then it would just come down to engine and the sort of power. If you're the kind of guy that's going to go for the V4 option of this, then the Desert X is going to be out of the question, because the Multistrada comes with the V4 with 170 horsepower, so you'd be more inclined to go for that. But that's a different bike in itself totally. This bike's so good at what it does. You know, if you want to thrash it around, this is the bike for you. You know, because I do think there's that sweet spot of 110 horsepower on the road bikes, and this hits it. You know, it revs high and it just flies along, and you're not going to like get up to speeds where you're going to get put in jail. So yes, awesome bike, and I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, go up there and check them out, watch the reviews, and if you're really serious about buying one, you know, don't go up there and waste their time, but if you're serious about buying one, get up there and have a little demo on it. They'll be happy to help. The guys up there are so kind. Give them a call, make a booking, mention the Gym Tube channel if you're going through this channel and you've watched this and you're thinking of heading up there, and they'll help you out. So that's it. We're back here, North London Ducati. They've done the bike, quick turnaround. I dropped the bike off at 9. It was ready by about 1 o'clock, so I've just popped back over here. and I'm gonna go say hello, pick the bike up, and I'll be away. So same day turnaround, which is pretty good service if you ask me, so I'm very happy about that. So yeah, pop up there and check some of the bikes out if you're interested in Ducati. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure to make the video today. I hope you've all enjoyed it, and if you've got any questions, any interest or about the bike, I'll see you in the comments. Let me know, give us a shout. What experiences have you got with these bikes? What would you rather have, this or something like a Desert X, or some of the other brands, the Triumph or the BMW? Let me know, let's have a chat. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye.